Hi, I'm Deb Engle, and I'm so excited today to be here with Jennifer Louden, talking about her brand new book, Why Bother? Discover the Desire for What's Next. There it is.
But
Yay.
look, I can make it disappear. I
It
can
does.
make
It
it.
sort of disappears.
Oh my God, that is hysterical.
That's so cool. It's like
There
magic.
it is.
I
It
love it.
is. I've always
Beautiful
wanted to be
cover.
magic. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's a
I
beautiful
love it.
cover.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt your
No.
introduction.
No, I think that's the coolest thing ever. So Jennifer is known as a personal growth pioneer because she really helped launch the whole concept of self-care years ago with her first bestseller, which was called The Woman's Comfort Book. And since then, she's written 6 additional books, which are in print with more than 1 million copies in print. And as a fellow writer, I know that that is a huge, huge accomplishment. And such a good feeling to know that you've reached all of those people and helped them in their lives. She's appeared on hundreds of TV programs, radio shows, podcasts, and she has appeared on Oprah, which she talks about in the book. And it's one of those stories that I think I will always remember because it's poignant and it's powerful and it's honest and it's funny all at the same time. She has been teaching women's retreats since 1992. And I can attest to the fact that I know a number of people who have gone to her writing retreats and have come back just glowing from the experience. Plus, she has a really vibrant online community and has been building those communities for more than 20 years. So she's a pioneer in that as well. She lives in Colorado, and we are just excited to be here. I just really have been looking forward to this.
And that's great. Thank you.
Why bother? Of course, as an author myself, I always love to know kind of the backstory of other authors, how you write, why you write, how these ideas come to mind. And I love this book in particular because it's inspiring and practical at the same time, which I think is just like the best combination ever. And it's based on your life. You know, a lot of the reason that it is so inspiring and so practical is that you use real life examples and teaching moments in it. So can you tell us a little bit about where the idea for the book came from and why is it called Why Bother?
I think this is the book I've been trying to write for maybe 20 years, but for sure for the last 11 years. So when I started with the Women's Comfort Book, it was in 1992. And I wrote a book about every year, 2 years, up until about 11 years ago. Well, there was a couple longer stretches in there, but so writing books was what I did. I mean, I did speaking and teaching and retreats, but writing, I was a writer first and foremost. Yeah. And then I hit this wall, and book after book, I would send my agent an idea, and then I wouldn't want, she'd be like, oh, that's a great idea. And then I wouldn't want to write it, or it would fall apart. And I kept teaching retreats. I had my business, and so I was making a good living, but the book wouldn't come. And so about 6 years ago now, maybe a little bit more than that, 7 years, 8 years, I don't know, I am terrible with time. I spoke at a women's conference, and when I told this story, these stories of my life, some of which ended up in the book, and I used the poem, Barns Burned Down, Now I Can See the Moon, the famous Basho haiku. And actually it wasn't a Basho, it was Maasai. And I got off that stage, I'm like, that is the best speech I've ever given. And then a friend said, oh my God, those stories are incredible. And I thought, I'm gonna write a memoir. So I spent the next 4 years and 500 pages writing a memoir, and gave it to a friend. She's a renowned book coach, Jenny Nash, to read. And she had the horrible task of telling me that the book totally didn't work as a memoir. So out of the ashes of that, another book came that my agent turned down. And then out of the ashes of that came this book. And I think that how it became Why Bother, I wish I remember that moment that I said the title. Yeah. I said it to Jenny Nash. I wish I said, but it was like that moment when I said it, it was all these things that I've been trying to figure out and write about in all these different forms for all these years just came together. And I thought about the different women, real women that I'd worked with or that I was friends with, that I wanted to reach, who had either always given their lives to everybody else, or who had had a lot of success and didn't know, did they have it in them to keep being successful, or who had gone through the kind of grief and loss that is not even just garden variety, if you will, that we all go through, that I had gone through. And So that's the story of how the book very slowly came together.
Yeah, how it evolved.
Mm.
So, and I think that's the thing, it spoke to me, and I could just imagine all of these women, millions of women reading this and feeling like you're speaking directly to them, partly because it's conversational and it's very intimate and it's warm and it's real, but also because you touch on all of those universal themes that we all go through. So you say toward the beginning of the book that you feel like why bother is one of the most important questions any of us could ask. And
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about that. Why is it such an important question?
Well, because when we're asking why bother, and you may not use those words, you may use what's the point, who cares, it's all been done before, I'm too old, it's too late, right?
Yeah.
We all have different ways of languaging it. So if you all are listening and going, I don't say why bother. Oh, I think you do. You just say it in a different way because it's such a human question. But we think we know the answer. And we think it's no point, no reason, too late. We think we know the answer. So actually why it's such an important question is because there is a question there to be asked, but we're not asking it. We think we know.
Yeah.
So maybe the answer is, I don't want to bother about this anymore. What's that going to mean to my life? Maybe it means I really do love my life, but why does it feel so flat?
Yeah.
There can be but the curiosity and the fact that we realize we're asking a question that's the first thing that we have to do.
Yeah. It's kind of like we don't know what we don't know, right? When we're
Right.
stuck in the middle of it, we don't know that there's anything else. And that's really what this book does, is I think it opens up that portal. Yeah, that question is that what if,
Yeah. What if? What's up? What's
yeah,
not? Why not?
exactly. What's
Who?
next?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All of those questions that open up the door just a little bit to
Yeah. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a
yes,
little bit.
yes. So we're doing this interview right in the middle of the pandemic and social isolation and quarantine and
So
lockdown.
I'm outside somehow.
With your view of Taos behind you, the magic of Zoom and Google.
Right.
I just love it. Yes, really, it is a painting behind you. So, so it seems like there's so much in this book that
Mm.
speaks to exactly where we are now, and I think the timing really couldn't be more perfect because everything that you're talking about will give people support, sustenance, nourishment. I think it just, and comfort really is
Mm.
something that we need in a big way right now. So I'm wondering if you feel like you are seeing any shifts from what we're going through with the pandemic. Do you feel like maybe it will prompt people to ask that why bother question more in their lives?
I do. I think there's a few opportunities and dangers right now. And I just came back from a run, excuse my sweaty t-shirt, and I was listening to NPR on the way back, and someone was talking about, or it was a number of chefs on, professional chefs, but they were talking about how they were just rediscovering their love of home cooking. And it made me go, this is one of the things that might happen that's positive, is that we discover things that we love again, that can bring pleasure and joy in our life. And that is one of the ways we get our bother on. Sometimes our life is fabulous, but we're so exhausted by it, or we're moving so fast. So if we discover some of that and fill ourselves up, and then we can have some more of that when life comes back, that would be incredible.
Yeah.
But I also think that a pandemic, and historically, I was reading about this, the New York Times did an article on it. Historically, like the Black Death and Spanish flu, and obviously I just mixed up big historical leaps there. They cause society to change. And I think we're going to see society change in some deep ways. And I think that is going to be prompted by and cause us to do a lot of reevaluation. What do we want our lives to look like? And so I think that the question, why bother, is going to become, again, we'll say it in different ways. It's going to become really strong. Like, do I want to bother about that job? Do I want to bother? Like, I've been locked up with this person, maybe that you're in a partnership with for, what may end up being, 2 or 3 months. Like, wow, what do I want to bother about in that relationship? About our health? I think there's some deep reevaluation that might be happening for some of us that they have the privilege of doing that.
Right. Yeah, you talk in the book about how the question why bother is really fertile ground. And I loved it when you said that, because it seems like that's exactly what you're saying, is that it gives us an opportunity to kind of dig deep into the soil and see what's there, see what's rooted and what's planted, and do we want to keep tending those plants, or do we want to plant something else instead?
Yes.
So yeah, and it also speaks to something which you talk about in the book. Just one of the things that I think you do so well is you get to the heart of so many of those basic fears that we all have, like, am I enough? Do
Mm.
I matter? Will I be successful? Am I lovable? All those things that we just universally worry about.
Hmm.
And that one of, do I matter? Does my life matter? Does what I'm doing matter? It seems like that's sort of at the heart and soul of what you're saying,
Yeah.
is during this time, we'll have that opportunity to reevaluate.
I do,
So
I do. I think, Deborah, that's exactly it. And I think we're actually finding, I hope that we're finding, I mean, this is my deepest wish for the book, that we're finding that we do matter,
yeah,
and that our lives matter, and that our desires matter, and what we're curious about, what we want to create and how we want to engage matters. And then maybe there's a way that coming out of this, or going through everything right now, we're in the middle of it, we have no idea what it's going to look like, that it will bring that home to us in a deep, deep way.
yeah, yep. So that we really could be changed.
Yeah.
And you also talk about how that's our choice. We kind of look to the external world for the validation and for the change, but it's in us. So, which so much speaks to self-care, what you've written
Mhm.
about and what you've taught for so long. How do you put the why bother and self-care together? Why is this book and that question, why is it such a big tool, an important tool in self-care?
I have always been a proponent that self-care is not about bubble baths or scented
Yeah.
candles or, $2,000 moon dust face products, but it is actually about deeply treating yourself as someone of value and creating a life to some degree, to the degree that you're able or have the privilege of, that reflects that you matter and what matters to you. But self-care is also about taking care of yourself in such a way that you have the energy and the courage to bother. And one of the basic ideas in the Why Bother book, that's also in my last book, The Life Organizer, is this really, I just never came up with a good title for it, so it sounds just so clumsy, but it's minimum requirements for self-care. And I know it just sounds like something you go to the doctor's office or something, but the idea is that there's basic things that we all pretty much know that we need, not to be perfect, not to be optimal, not to have our best life, too much pressure, but just to basically feel okay and kind of know what's going on inside of me and be in touch with myself. And keeping an eye on those, to me, is such a baseline of self-care and being able to know why we bother. And without them, I have seen so many people completely lose their bother and not even know why, and think it's because they need a divorce or they need a new job or they need to go back to school, and actually have they been tracking enough alone time or enough creating for creating's sake, enough sleep, right? So I think self-care gives us the ground to bother, and it's a real easy place to overlook or get complicated. It doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to cost any money.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. So you tell so many good stories, both from your life and the lives of other people in the book. What's one story that maybe is surfacing right now in your mind that you could give us, you know, the Reader's Digest version of? Because I just want to give people a flavor of the kinds of stories that are in the book.
Sure. Well, the one that I read the book for the audiobook, and the one that still makes me cry, even after I have written it and rewritten it so many times, is the story about my now husband asking me to marry him and my inability to say yes, and then how I got to yes.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite stories. And then I think another favorite story that you alluded to was the Oprah story, where I thought getting on Oprah would finally make me feel good enough. And spoiler alert, it didn't.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I loved both of those stories. And the one about Oprah, that idea of looking to somebody out there in the world to choose us, to
Sure.
make us feel good enough. And again, to feel that
Yeah.
we matter was so profound. And then that love story with Bob, with
Mm,
your husband. And,
yeah.
there, as I was reading it, I just thought, oh, it's so again, so poignant and so real. And so many emotions came up for you and for me both as I was reading it. What's the one takeaway from that story, aside from say yes,
Yes,
what
right,
you, what
right.
you really desire? It's all about getting in touch with what you really want, even though you may be afraid of what you really want.
Yes, I think it is about that. And it's also about, for me, um, sometimes giving myself permission to enjoy what's here, to say yes to it. I don't have to wait. It doesn't have to be complicated. I don't have to earn it. I remember early on when Bob and we fell in love very soon after both of us split up with our spouses. And that caused me a tremendous amount of guilt and confusion for a long time. And I remember at one point, I looked at him and I said, I can really have this? And he said, yes, you can really have this. And it was so like, and it was like all the reasons why I was making up, why this wouldn't work and we couldn't be together and we couldn't blend our families together. It was like, oh, maybe it's not real. So that's the thing that's something I keep reflecting on, because that, not in our marriage, but in other parts of my life.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's such a powerful story. And you
Mhm.
talk too in the book, well, yeah, I just think it's such a good point that to get to say yes,
Yeah.
and especially again now, I think sometimes when people are going through hardship,
Mhm.
there are always people going through hardship. We go
True.
through hardship,
Yeah.
but to delay our joy until everybody is happy is just not going to happen. And really
No.
saying yes to joy in your own life is the way we're going to bring more joy into this world. So,
And in a way, I think when we say no to delight and joy and satisfaction, we are almost denying the people who can't have it right now. We're almost belittling what they're going through, or they don't want us to suffer. If we can be happy, if we can be whole, we want everyone to be happy and whole. And it doesn't mean that we forget that we need to share more and take more action on people's behalf, but that we don't have to, yeah, we don't, losing our joy, it just,
yeah.
it doesn't make for very effective activism either.
Right, right. Yeah, there's a wonderful line that I always go back to over and over again: join people in their light, not in their
Mm,
suffering.
I love that.
Yeah, yep, which, we're here to show up for each other and to help one another, but to see the light in each other rather
Yeah.
than become miserable or suffer ourselves. Help
Or put off our lives, right?
Right, right,
Yeah.
absolutely. So the storytelling aspect of the book is such an important part of how you wrote it, but you also talk about the importance of readers telling their story, telling a different
hmm
story.
hmm
Can you talk a little bit about that, what that means, and maybe some examples of it?
Sure. So I'm sure everyone knows that our brains are story making machines. We can't actually accurately perceive reality. Right now, we have so much sensory input coming in, and our brains have evolved to go, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that, just need this. And I'm going to rearrange it so it makes sense,
Mhm.
even though maybe that's not the order that it happened in. So that's why you remember the family dinner one way and your sister remembers it
Right,
completely another way, right?
right.
So we're narrative brains, and there's so much research about it. It's just fascinating. But the simple idea is, what's the story you're telling yourself now about one area or aspect of your life that feels what's the point, or who cares, or it's too late, and just begin to notice it as a narrative. What if it isn't the absolute truth, like we are being held to the planet by gravity? That's a truth, right? We would say, we could all pretty much agree it's a physical law, it's happening. You and I are using some kind of technology that sends little bits of information so that we can record this. So beginning to just notice the story you're telling yourself about why you can't bother is the first step. Beginning maybe to write it down, tell it to a friend, to a therapist. These are all the reasons I can't bother. All the complaints, all the ways you're so sure. And then we begin to see, what would I have to leave behind? What would I have to leave behind? I'm not saying you can or you will yet, if I was going to bother in you. So that's the entry point for that
Yeah.
new story making. But we do have to make a new story. It's hard, it takes time, but it's completely possible. I'm proof.
Yeah. It's Well, and that's the other thing, is that we do learn so much just from your experiences and how honestly you've shared them. So if somebody's watching this and they're thinking, oh, but I just really don't even have the energy to start.
Mhm.
I can't even, I can ask the question, why bother? But I kind of get stuck there because I just don't know where
Sure.
to go from there. What would you say to them?
Well, I would say that that's why I wrote the chapter Ease In, and I tried to give really simple things that would start to cook up some energy for you. It's totally normal. It doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean you can't bother. And one of the ideas in that chapter is just asking the question, I wonder. And wonder opens the door to desire. And what we're trying to do in these why bother periods is find desire again. Not make a plan, not get somewhere, not figure something out, but get that flow of life going. So really the whole book is about getting that energy and flow going again.
Yeah.
And it is there. The other thing I would say is that life force is always there. Life doesn't give up on us. And so if we can just begin to meet it part of the way, just kind of clear out. I think of it like I went to school in North Florida for a couple of years, and there were spring-fed rivers. And you could kind of dive down and see the springs coming out of the rock. And I think that life is like that. It's always trying to bubble through us. But we have to kind of clean the muck out of the spring a little bit. So that's really what this is about. That's what you're up to. It's okay that you don't have energy.
Yeah. And you ask a lot of questions along the way, or give readers reflection questions,
Mm-hmm.
journaling, things to think about. What do you hope readers will do with this book? How would you like them to use the book?
Oh, I love that question. I really want it to be as if I'm walking with you. I want it to be more of a companionship that changes, that just opens possibilities, cleans out some of that gunk for you, and helps you know that you're not alone in this, and that it's not an effort of giant will that I'm asking you to do, or effort. It's easing up a little bit. It's lightening up. It's letting in. Somebody who's read an early copy said it's like a bubble bath for the soul.
Yeah.
And, I'm like, I love that.
Yes.
It's a little, so just let the current of the book take you, and see if it starts to open up some new possibilities or ideas.
Great.
That's what I want.
Awesome. Well, there's a point in the book where you write, and I'm going to quote from the book here. I just love this. You say, I wish someone had told me that opening to life again is my choice. I wish someone had told me that I have what it takes within me to create a new life. I wish someone had told me all this not once, but again and again. Can you hear me telling you? Oh, I just love that. So is there anything in addition, as we wrap this up, because the time has sort of flown by, is there any other one thing that you just really want readers to take away from this book that you want to tell them again and again?
When we're deep in why bother, it is completely normal to feel that there's no way out and nothing will ever change. It is absolutely a lie. Things will change, and they can change for the better, and it doesn't have to be as big or as painful or as hard as you think it's going to be. Can you meet life even a quarter of the way? Can you follow desire or delight or wonder even a teeny tiny bit more today? Can you say to yourself, my desires matter even a little bit? You're on your way.
Oh, beautiful. And truly the perfect message for the time that we're in right now, for all times, but especially right now.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
So
so much.
you. This is such a joy and a pleasure. So tell us how people can get in touch with you and find out all the different things that you do.
Yeah, so to find out all the stuff that you get when you buy a copy of the book, we have some lovely goodies for you. It's jenniferlouden.com/why-bother. And you can find out if you send us the receipt, we give you goodies for the book, including we're going to do a 5-day free course. You can possibly win a seat to one of my desire retreats in person this summer, if we're ever allowed to be in person together again. And then my general world is at jenniferlouden.com, and you can sign up for all kinds of things there.
Awesome. Well, highly, highly recommended. The book, your retreats, your experiences, all of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for this conversation and for everything you do.
Thank you, Debra. It was amazing.
Okay, stay well. Bye-bye.